Good morning. So I wanted to start, and actually, we talked about getting customer first orders recently, and I realized that the coverage so far had been, it was not good enough. And I wanted to show you a problem that I ran into when I was originally attempting to write SQL to analyze customer behavior, namely getting their first order, but also getting attributes about the order. And we'll just walk through it in a trial and error process. And again, I encourage you at any point, if you think you know where I'm going with something, try it yourself. Just try it out, because the more errors you make, the better you become with SQL. So let's take a for instance here. We have our customer ID from the payment table. Earlier we found the minimum of their P dot payment date. You know what? Yeah, payment date. Um, Actually, we'll just use the payment ID because we know the payment ID goes up as the date goes up. It's the primary key of the table, and goes up over time. So right, the ID of the payment goes up over time. It's a primary key. So the minimum of the primary key will correspond to the minimum of the customer's payments. So the first one, not the minimum price, but the first payment, you'll see. And we'll get it from payment P and group by 1 to avoid an error. And let's just order by 1. Okay, and we have 599 rows here. So we have 599 customers. This is their minimum payment ID, first payment ID. Now, what if we wanted to find out what the order total was? Remember, we have a field called an amount. I think it's called just amount. So let's try to add that here, and it'll probably give me a group by error. So we need to group by the second column that we added. Alright, but now notice that, I don't have 500 rows for all my customers. I have one row for each customer, amount, and minimum payment ID. So every unique combination of customer and amount will get its own minimum payment ID. That's the problem. So if we wanted to just look at the attributes of the first order, we can't do it like this. And this used to really confuse me. So I just wanted to show you some different ways to get around it. The first one you might like a lot, you might not like it at all. We're going to use something called a subquery. And a subquery is basically, you've been doing it a lot when you do like select star from, and then you have this kind of inner query that you're selecting from. So you've been doing that all along, but now we're going to be a little bit more deliberate with it. So let me get rid of amount and go back to what we originally had. We only have one thing to group by now. So we've got our some odd 599 rows for each customer's first payment, but we want to get all the other columns about that payment ID. So the thing we're going to do is we're just going to add another column, but instead of selecting the column directly, we're going to select it via a subquery. So within these parentheses, we're going to select again from the same table. So we're going to get P2 amount from payment P2. And notice that my alias is different. I'm using the same table payment, but I'm calling it P2. And we're going to say where the P2.payment ID is equal to the min of P.payment ID, which is above here. So notice that all we're doing is we're getting these two columns, and then we're using a subquery here, subquery, to join the outer rows to this inner row. And the inner row here is just the amount, but I only care about it where the P2 payment ID is equal to the minimum of P.payment ID. And again, this is a reference to this outer column here that we're selecting. And we're just going to call this as first payment amount. And with a little luck, this will run. Great. Now we have back to our original 599 rows, which represent the true first payments made by some given customer. There's only one row per customer now. And congrats, this is your first subquery. It might seem, a little bit abstract, but kind of get used to this. Again, we're joining through a subquery data from the subquery to the outer query as if it were its own column. And make sure, the one thing to always understand is you need to be able to match one column of the inner subquery to a column in the outer subquery. And implicitly, this is it's an inner join, so to speak. So what if we wanted to get not just the first payment amount, but I think there's another column called rental ID, right? We know that in this payment table, there's a rental ID that we've worked with before. So you can just copy and paste this. Let's just do that. Let's copy it, paste it down. And try to do it. Try to get rental ID for this first customer's order. We already have the customer, the payment ID, and the amount. Try to figure out how to rework this subquery to get the first rental ID. I'm going to do it now. So we're just going to change amount to rental ID, and I believe it will work. Have an extra comma. Here we go. Still have 599 rows, one for each customer's first order. And there you have it. This is one strategy for dealing with the first order and a variety of other attributes about it. Let's talk about another one. So we're going to use a subquery again, but we're going to use I'm just going to create a new video for this so it doesn't go that long. Try this though. See if you can figure this out from scratch. Look at it, think about it. Remember that the inner query has to match a column in the outer query, and think about what originally drove us here. It's that if you try to add more columns to the outer query, you start getting a minimum for every combination of the columns, which gives you more than one row per customer, and a customer can only have one first order. So keep trying that, think about it a little bit, and we'll keep cranking along on this idea, and soon enough you'll really be good.